So Varsha, can I start? Put Global Talent TV also on?
Yes.
Okay, can I start?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Sola, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Good morning in US, Canada. Good afternoon in UK, Europe, Africa. Good evening in Asia, Pacific, India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan. I know some of the people are joining from different parts on different platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, I am super excited to welcome very bright, young, dynamic, and the most respected professor of strategy and management to this primetime leadership excellence series called New DNA of Leadership. I would like to welcome Dr. David Sola, and it is indeed my honor to introduce such an esteemed guest of honor, the doctor and the professor of strategy and management, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at Dr. Sola, he is born in north of Italy with father a mechanical engineer and mother as an entrepreneur. Dr. Sola's upbringing was so strong that during his childhood, he had the inclination for business and how to succeed in life. Wow. That is how, the future leaders need to understand that you need to pick up this when you are like a child. We are seeing that in Dr. Sola today. He has been a meritorious student all along, winning scholarships, awards, and a keen learning mindset, which drove him to ESCP Business School for his master's degree, again on scholarship. With his top class, rather super class, rather world class learning attitude, he actually won the scholarship easily to be there. 1998 master's degree, ESCP, EAP, European School of Management, Paris, Oxford, Berlin. 1998 bachelor's degree, Facoltà di Economia di Torino, Italy. 2005, finally, PhD. And it is called in Italy, Università di Torania, Dipartimento di Economia, Aziendale. A true master of languages. You will see Dr. Sola speaks Italian, being a mother tongue, but he speaks great English, French, and German. Guten Morgen, guten Abend, guten Tag. And he also speaks Spanish very well, at least to an extent that he is a good Spanish speaker. He has been visiting professor at many places, including IIM Bangalore, India, where he taught strategy and entrepreneurship in MBA program. He has been Helsinki School of Economics, AALTO University, visiting professor of teaching organizational transformation in MBA program. University of Mauritius, visiting professor teaching applied economics in the MSc of Business and Economics. Professor Sola is full professor at ESCP Business School, teaching in London, Paris, and Madrid. His research interests are in corporate transformation, entrepreneurship, and applied enterprise economics, with a particular focus on the scale-up phases of exponential technologies. He teaches the core courses of strategy and entrepreneurship across all ESCP Business School masters. He leads the JBC Entrepreneurship Institute London chapter and co-directs the Health Management Innovation HMI Research Center with Professor Oliver Solpic. Dr. Sola is an author of numerous articles, policy papers, book chapters, case studies, and presents regularly at various international research conferences. His book, How to Think Strategically. Wow, How to Think Strategically. Your Roadmap to Innovation and Results, co-authored with another author called Mr. J. Courtier, published by Financial Times, was nominated for the prestigious Management Book of the Year award by CMI and British Library. Wow. He is currently working on his next book. And that topic is very important. The resilient organization, that's what we require in today's environment, which shows one of the key patterns of resilient organization is the ability to understand and what to scale up, as well as proven methods to implement scale ups in tough times. Professor Sola is the principal and president at 3H Partners, a leading strategy activation provider, very active in supporting top management of leading corporations on issues such as new business models, innovation and strategy at large. Professor Sola covers a wide range of industries, ranging from F&B to healthcare to energy to technology and financial services. I can go on and I can keep on talking about Dr. Sola, but then I need to stop somewhere. Dr. Sola, I fold my hands. That's the way we do today. Indeed, pleasure to have you on this weekly primetime leadership series called New DNA of Leadership.
It's my pleasure. It's absolute my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a ton. Dr. Sola, we are on Zoom. We're live on FB, YouTube, and Global Talent Television. The format of this session is wherein I will have some questions for you. While I will be having these questions with you, I am requesting the attendees on various platforms to please park their questions for Dr. Sola, so that once I am through from my questions, I can take their questions. And anyone who is on Zoom, I would certainly be able to, take them straight on Zoom, and I can unmute them and they can ask the questions themselves. That is the format which we will be working on. And we may take an hour or go beyond that. Let's see how we can work. We are going to. I know you have kept, I had informed you have kept an hour, 75 minutes for us. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, Dr. Sola, my first question to you. When I look at your journey of leadership, business, and education excellence both, because you are a combination of leadership at business houses as well as education excellence places. It has been very brilliant when I was going through your background. But I really wanted to, when I heard about it, that as a child, when your father was a mechanical engineer, your mom was an entrepreneur, you were a bright student, bright child. And I also come across a statement, success is the mirror of effort. Wow. Success is the mirror of effort. I am very keen and very, very curious to see that how did it happen? What kind of hard work, what kind of passion you had as a child? Over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the very extended review of my background. And thank you also because initially you say this young man. Well, I'm not that young anymore, but I'm pleased that somebody still, nominates me as young. But anyway, I come up with from a very, very normal family, hardworking family in the north of Italy, in the 70s and 80s, where Italy was on the fast growth. And my parents, they always told me that when they arrived from their honeymoon, they had 5,000 liras. which is the equivalent of 2 pounds. Yeah, and that's everything they did was through effort. So they waited 8 years to have me so that they could build a house, so that when I arrived, there was a roof on my head. And they kept on telling me all those stories throughout my life. And that's where, you know, this effort is the, you know, success is the mirror of effort comes from. You know, when we look at ourselves at the mirror, the only thing we are in control is how much effort we put. The outcome, it's always a derivative. So if you don't put much effort, you cannot pretend a great outcome. You might be lucky, but even to be lucky, you need to try, because luck doesn't come if you don't search for it. So, and you know, you said I had to, and I had a few scholarships. That's true, but it was a matter of necessity. Either I was getting the scholarship or I wouldn't go forward into my studies, because my parents would never have been able to afford the type of schools that I've been very lucky to attend around. And of course, it was also a matter of pride. But the reality is I come from a village where being well educated was not really something that, you know, people would look for, because they were in my class. I think we were the most successful class ever. We had 6 people get into university, but in the previous class there was probably 1, and the 10 years before probably 0. So it's not that I had example to follow. It was something that you know, it come as we move on, and also I'm always a big fan that as you achieve some small success, then you want to get more. And I didn't shoot for the star from the beginning, not at all, but I had some sort of star, which was what I thought it would be a stretch goal. But if I look in now, it was not very stretched. But at the time, with the context of a small village, with my parents hardworking, both working 2 jobs each to keep the family going, they were stretch objects. So, of course, my parents were a great impression, as were my grandparents and probably the people around the village, because those were the example I could follow. There was no other example. At the time, there was no TV. So, you know, the TV was only 1 channel. And the only thing I learned from early on to be curious about the news. So I would be almost religiously 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock in the evening, watch the news, because I wanted to know what was happening in the world.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I am impressed to see we all have gone through this process. I am elder to you maybe by at least 8 to 10 years. I must be elder to you. And we come from a different background than the leaders, future leaders who are today on Zooms and on smartphones. That's a fact of life. But you said a very important point, which has touched me. You said you cannot be lucky unless you make an effort. So while as a child, you have been continuously making an effort to be something different. And there were no previous experiences. And there were no previous examples in your village where people could relate to. And you talked about 6 of you guys who have made it to the university from the village. I would like to give a round of applause. And this is what, ladies and gentlemen, who are watching it now, and especially I'm going to be talking to the youngsters who have all the facilities of the world today available on 1 phone. They need to understand that this generation has gone through this process and has achieved excellence after a lot of tough situation. And another point Dr. Sola made was, in case he would have not got the scholarship, probably he would have not gone to the university. So that means he had to really put in the best and the best and the best effort. Am I right? To be there, to get the scholarship and what he is there today. So this is the real journey of excellence. After making it possible, when there is no past, there's no previous examples, and making it to this level. I admire you, Dr. Sola, for this. Tell me, when you were as a student, did you plan Was there any special mentors you had? Looking at your parents is separate, but were there some mentors who helped you? Did you make a proper plan to do it? What happened? That's what I am keen to know.
So, of course, I had many mentors, and I've probably been blessed at every part in my life to meet people that were exceptional. But again, people meet a lot of people, but you need also to search for them. And I've always been very keen on getting to know people that are far, far better than me, so that I can, learn from them. So at any stage of my life, I always had somebody that was looking up, but I was always looking for it. And still am I, I still always, I'm very lucky to meet a lot of people, not necessarily elder than me, it could be younger, but people that I can say, if I spend a few hours with them, I will be better off than if I don't. And it might be very selfish, but I always had that very big eagerness in learning from other people, just to be a better person, not necessarily to show it off, because, showing off, you don't learn anything, because what you show off, you already know. So it's much easier to learn something from people where you don't show off and the other people show it to you. So, but anyway, yes, I always had goals. From the 70s, late 70s, the stock exchange was growing like crazy. Yeah. And on the news, there was a lot of this about. So I wanted to be a broker. I wanted to become an agent in the stock exchange. And that was my first goal. So that's why then I took certain studies. I never been in the stock exchange. I don't even invest in equity. But it was something that really guided. So I had to be good at studies, because I had to go to university. You could not get that job if you didn't want to do that. So, but then of course, that was a stretch goal. But then as soon as I, started my academic career, it changed. So for example, when I got to my high school, that goal changed more into, I want to work abroad. Because, and there I started to mature. So when I was 16, I went for the first time in the UK to do a summer job and learn my, at the time, very poor English. And there open up, again, a new horizon, which was, I want to study abroad. Then as soon as I got into university, I had the luck of meeting a lot of great professors. And therefore I said, but one thing I would really like to do, as and when I will be able to afford it, would be to give it back by being a teacher. And that's how I started to be a teacher, because I did it as a side job when I was working in a bank, because, a little bit for personal pride, a little bit because I wanted to give back, a little bit because I learned that by teaching, I learn better. So by teaching, believe it or not, I got to know the topics I was teaching much better than I did before teaching them. So still now, teaching is a big part of my life, and countersensical to many professors, I do take on a lot of new subjects. Why? Because by teaching them, I get to master them or learn them much deeper than I would if I didn't teach them. So that's how, for me, I cannot live without a goal, without a stretch long-term goal, but those goals change as soon as I get into the horizon that I will be able to get them. Because that's how I keep myself sane and I keep myself motivated.
Just brilliant. Dr. Sola, that's quite exciting that the moment you see the goalpost, then you go to the other one, and you get anxious to move to the next one. And now here is a real example of someone, ladies and gentlemen, who has continuously been working towards achieving education excellence. When you look at his bachelor's or master's or finally PhD, this is the question now, David Sola, to you. The thesis topics are attracting my attention. Because I am looking way back in 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, you must think about it, what I am asking him a question. In 2005, Dr. Sola's thesis topic was the learning organization.
Let me correct you, it was 98. 2005 was my PhD thesis.
Oh, it was 98, okay. Then the second thesis was knowledge management as strategy for future. And finally, in doctorate, it was mindset and behavior as source of competitive advantage. Now, when I look at 1998 to 2005, and when I'm today in 2021, the three topics, the learning organization, the knowledge management strategy for future, and finally mindset and behavior as source of competitive advantage are really attracting my attention. Looking at this professor, a great professor of strategy and management and leadership. All these three areas are even today very vital, very important. I can visualize the impact of the frame of mind of Dr. Sola to investigate, intervene, and inculcate such key topics. I, along with audience, Dr. Sola, would surely like to know, how did this happen? What were the most important ingredients? And how did it help you to shape up your career ladder with these three theses?
I mean, the example of this thesis, it was a moment in time, but it's pretty much the result of something I learned from a very, very early age. And I carry on applying it and teaching it to the people I teach, being students or executives or clients I serve as a consultant, which is think ahead. The issue is not being right or wrong. When people debate things that are current, they are, whatever you do today, you decide it. So DK, you decided some time ago to have this session today. So debating about today is far too late because you already took that decision. Yeah. So when I look at topics, I'm asking myself, how is going to look like the world sometime in the future? Am I a mind reader? Am I a future reader? Not at all. Yeah. But something that will be big in the future as one important descriptor. It is small at the moment. Yeah. So whatever I look at the time, the learning organization was something in 95, 98, when I started to work on that. Or I finished in 98, but I started in 95, where was the period when the Japanese culture or business culture was becoming of age. It was the period where a very famous book called The Knowledge Creating Company by Nonaka was published. So it was something that, again, because I could speak English, I was reading English literature or business literature, which was on the forefront. I was reading the Harvard Business Review and this type of thing. So I had the curiosity to say, oh, that's interesting. That is a very Japanese culture, but it's starting to happen in America. So what would be that for us in Europe? At the moment, at that time, Europe was my horizon. And but it was a very calculated risk, because if something is being talked about and is very embryonic, it will maybe turn into a full organ or into a full thing. Sometimes an embryo dies. What I try to do is always look ahead and then try to look at the present, and then, which is also what later on we will maybe discuss about scaling up, because scaling up, it's all about the process of moving from a very small being to a very big being. And so I'm not any strange magician that can read the future. I just, in a very composed way, try to ask myself, how is the future going to look like? What are the options? And then I work on those options, and every so often I check where they are, and if they're growing very fast, the probability that they're going to become mainstream are very high.
Fantastic. Very impressive. Dr. Sola, when I look at your career ladder, I look at two major roles, one side the corporate, one side the education excellence. Now let me focus on your corporate role, where you had role of operations manager in zgravity.com London, head of new ventures, Hartley Investment Trust, London, senior manager with McKinsey in Milano, principal 3H Partners, LLP, London, Paris, Rome, New York, Tunis, principal iStarter, London. Now tell me some of the key achievements in these roles and what value did you add to the organization as a business leader? I'm not going to the education right now, the other journey. I'm very keen to know how did it add value to the organization, to the companies, and how did you add value to you as the doctor of leadership or teacher of leadership? Dr. Sola.
Well, we're talking about probably 20 years of work, so it's very difficult to enumerate. But let me try to establish some key principles. Yeah. So again, from my very humble background, I learned very early on that one simple equation should be there. Yeah. So if somebody pays me for a day, for a week, for a month, I need to give them back X times. Yeah. Because that's the only, so I need to exceed what by a factor, what they give me. So I'm always constantly asking myself, am I worth it? Yeah. And have I given back more than they given me? And that is a very simple rule that comes from farms. Yeah. So, you know, if you are not giving the productivity that is required, being intellectual or being physical or being entertainment or being whatever, it does. And when that very simple equation doesn't work, then you know that you're not doing a good job, or you need to think about how to do a good job. So throughout my career, there were very, very different jobs, and everyone required a certain level of expertise or skill, which, you know, if people are paying me, I need to make sure that they get back a number of times. And that's one principle I always followed. The second one is that in any job I do, I need to think that every day that passes by, I learn something. Why? Because that learning will enable me to be better at that job. And if that doesn't happen, then there is a problem in the system. It means I haven't been curious enough, or I haven't not been carving out time to think about how to do it better. Because just doing repeatedly something, it's, you know, there is no bad at doing always the same job. The only bad thing is not to try to get it better every day. So you can be in the same role for a long time and keep on doing it all the time. You know, we learn it from the martial arts. Yeah. So if you think in martial arts, people, they do the same thing for decades. But after decades, they become masters. Yeah. And it's still the same kicks, it's still the same thing, but of course with a different rhythm, with a different level of flexibility. And that mastery comes only through repetition. And one of the things I always try to teach my children, my students, that a lot of people confuse being great with peak performance. Being great is the variance. So of course you need to reach a very high performance, but it's not the reaching of the very high performance that will make you a great performer. It's the ability to reduce the variance so that it means you're a master of what you're doing because you know the good and the bad. So reducing the variance and keep on improving is the most important thing. That's the difference between a pro and an amateur in anything. Public speaking, as cricket, as management, as leadership. It's not a question of taking a great decision. It's to be able to constantly and consistently take good decisions. That's the difference between greatness and normality. You know. And
excited. I'm getting super excited with your responses, and this is absolutely brilliant. If you always do what you have always done, you will always get what you have always got. Hence, do things differently. And you talked about, am I contributing and doing a value add against what I get? Am I giving expected to the organization? And am I learning every day in order to go to the next level of excellence tomorrow? And especially variance, when you're talking about mastering something and moving to the next level. This is a very great message to ladies and gentlemen, especially when there are students here. I can see a lot of students of management and strategy and leadership here. Look at Dr. Sola, understand what he's trying to talk about and build your future. And he is a role model for all of you. Those who are right now on this platform and those who are going to be seeing this video later on, there is a tremendous learning coming out from this professor of strategy, leadership, and management. Dr. Sola, my next question. Now I go to the other role. While your corporate roles, accountabilities, and deliverabilities, what you talked was especially very clear in order to build up the future business leaders, how they need to behave and how they need to be there. Now, let me now go to your another role, which is in the education excellence. I mean the roles of ESCP Europe Oxford and as a lecturer, Director and Dean of UK campus, Professor of Strategy and Management. It seems that the roles you were actually designed with your personality and background. Could you kindly share this journey of excellence as an education excellence leader, which you are presently doing and you have done earlier also? I am purposely keeping this present role to have, very clear focus of education excellence, because teachers, the mentors, the coaches are the most respected people in the world. And I always will salute the teacher first, then the God, in case both of them come in front of me. Since you are a teacher, you are a professor, let me know about your education excellence role, including teaching and leadership both.
Well, you said they were designed for me. In reality, I contributed to create them. So the reality is that
let me give a big round of applause to you. That's a beautiful response what you are giving.
Because one thing is to wait for somebody to call you in. Another way is to try to propose things. And I was very fortunate that the deans of the university, they seen an opportunity in the topics I was suggesting. And because I was giving it the first 10 years, I was a professional in the industry. So I was doing teaching really as a vocation. I never asked a penny. I never, I was doing it as a token back, because I went through all my education through scholarship. And therefore, I just went back to my institution, the University of Turin, and ESCP, at the time was called EAP. And I just offered to do something, because, in my spare time, and I was trying to carve out some time from my busy jobs. And that's how I built it. Then, of course, I must have done something right. And then from there, there were more and more opportunity. I remember that the first course I ever taught was something called Management Information Systems. And the director of I used to go and do sessions like small tutoring sessions. And then the director of studies, which unfortunately is not there anymore at the time, he called me and said, Davide, I've got a problem. The professor of Management Information System left the school. So the class starts next week. And that's the first problem. And the second problem is this course has the worst feedback of all the courses we have. And you, Davide, you know it because you were a student in the school. So,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, and so basically he asked me, can you do it? And it was 1 week before. So I said, okay, I do it at one condition, that I will shape the content within the curricula, but I will shape the content. So we're talking about 98. So the management information system, I made it become management and communication system, information communication system, and I built it around the internet, which of course was at the very, very beginning, and all around knowledge management, which I had brought a thesis about. And I made the course to become very case-based. Before it was very theoretical. And then, to cut the story short, the course was received amazing feedback, and the students, they really enjoyed that. We had a knowledge fair at the end where the students shared what they learned through like a little event. And since then, I never looked back. I always took more courses, and I always learn how to teach new things. I mean, technology has always been something I'm very keen on, and I can program and I can do things, but I always see technology as a mean to an end, not an end in itself. So, and that's how I did it in that way. But then all the other courses, I'm always starting, when you're a teacher, it's not very different from being a leader, because a teacher leads a class. And to lead a class, you need to think about what's the agenda of the students. And even better for the students is not their agenda that I care, but is the society agenda. So those students will need to end up in a society doing a job and having an impact. So I need to think about, and sometimes students might not understand at the beginning why I'm teaching them or I push them to learn certain things in a certain way, is because often I tell them, you are not my clients. My clients is the society. If I do a good job, you will get, you will be better professional, better humans when you're out there. And that's really, and as a dean, which has also been a job I've done, I contributed a little bit with my colleagues really to focus on outcomes rather than, I am really not interested in how you're going to teach it. As far as you agree and you commit to certain outcomes. And the freedom, of being a teacher, it should be to investigate new teaching methods. I will challenge you, or I was challenging them when I was in that role, to make sure that they have that at stake, that they have that at the core. Because that's what a teacher is. Teaching, ultimately, it's a vocation. And if you don't like it, you shouldn't do it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm seeing some of the comments getting from various professors, and I see Professor Bharti from Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute from Rai Bareilly talking about that we had learning organization in 2002. Yes, sir. I was the director on your board, advisory board director during that period. I remember that Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute in Bareilly had the learning organization which was started in 2002. Thank you very much for pointing it out, Mr. Bharti, Professor Bharti. It is, I think, after a lot of time we are talking today, but virtually. I can't see you, but I could see your comment coming in. I am very impressed with Dr. Sola's, journey of excellence. The objective is to tell the world, share with the world what kind of journey especially this great leader has done. Dr. Sola, now I am coming to your present role. It's a dedicated program at ESCP London, where you are on a dedicated program for graduate students focusing on entrepreneur scale-ups, cutting-edge research on how to handle and enable scale-up entrepreneurial firms, working in conjunction with Professor Jeffrey Rappert of Harvard Business School, and executive programs dedicated to both investors and entrepreneurs on how to create innovative approaches to scale up. Now, this role is highly influential in developing, nurturing the leadership attributes required in the era of globalization, glocalization, and COVIDization. I'm talking about globalization, glocalization, and COVIDization. Can you give me quickly what is the learning coming out for the business leaders from this fantastic program? I am impressed to see this program where you are talking about scaling up cutting-edge research on how to enable scale up of entrepreneur firms within the framework of your strategy. And I have even Ravinder Kalchu, who is another entrepreneur who is leader of the business excellence. He must understand this response from Dr. Sola. This was very important. We discussed it today, Ravinder Kalchu. Yes, sir.
So, why this topic is very close to my heart and to some colleague like Jeffrey and other like Martin Koop, with whom I've got the fortune of working with, is that we are in an exponential world. And exponential means that things can grow very, very fast. And as we know, we've been pushing innovation for the last decades, and we have a lot of people, including in India, you are not bad for startups. But starting up is just a moment in time. I even think that startup, it's a very bad term because it indicates a moment when you're starting. But a startup, to have an impact in society, should succeed. So it needs to grow to a size that will have an impact on someone, being the customer that use the technology or the solution they have, being the employees that they get a job because of that, being the government that gets some taxes out of it. There is plenty of people that they're all very keen on having innovation get at scale. But the problem of getting at scale is that most people, they have a very linear model. They think that with time, things will grow. And the reality is that this grow in the world we are now. If it happens, it will happen very, very quickly. And that requires completely different skill set, organizational models, because I give you an example of a very good company and a very good company that didn't succeed. So one company I wrote a case on is King, the maker of Candy Crush, a global success on gaming. The company was almost bust, and then they come up with not even Candy Crush, it was a different Candy Saga game before that one, that went from less than 100,000 users to 10 million users. Yeah, but in the meantime, that they grew like that, so they multiplied by 100 the users. They only multiplied by 10 the number of employees. They only multiplied by 2 the internal cost. So they manage, then they went from 10 million to 100 million. And so they multiplied by 10 the number of users, but they multiplied by 100 the revenue generated. Yeah. And they only multiplied by 5 the operational cost. So that is scalability, because a lot of people, another confusion that there is that scaling means growing. That's only one condition. The second condition is that you're growing profitably, because if not, somebody else will have to pick up the bills. So if you look at Uber at the moment, they've been an extremely great company. They have, they do a fantastic service. I am a big client of them, a big customer of them. They, in the last years, they double, triple, quintuple their revenues, but they also multiply by many more factors their losses, which means that they are not growing profitably, and somebody has to pick up the bill. Fortunately, some investors are doing it, but now that story is finished, they are cutting costs, they're cutting a lot of things because they need to, and all of this happens in 18, 24 months, which is the metaphor or the analogy I always use. In a scaling up phase, it's like driving a car at 200 an hour without windscreen and without brakes. Yeah, so it's very difficult to drive it if you don't learn that what could be well ahead of time. Oh, in 5 kilometers there will be a bump, so I need to do something, either steer on the right or the left to avoid the bump, because I don't have the brakes. I will not be able to stop before, and and this is a multifaceted, very complex problem, which needs a type of problem-solving skills, which is not taught in class. And it's not taught, because on startup, we have enough knowledge now to do it. But startup is a few people, trying to validate that a problem exists, a customer exists, and you can actually build a solution. An established company, on the other side, they have a lot of customers, they have an established product, they need to make it more and more profitable. But the startup will not become a bigger company just because God determined so. And there is a part in between. And now, in the past, that would take 10 years. So you have time to learn step by step. Now, either it happens in 2 or it will never happen. And that, it's really what at the moment interests me. And of course, as any of my management theory that I work on, my lab are companies. So this program is at the same time a teaching program, but is also a research program, because every year I embark 15, 20 scale up. So they're all companies that they do 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, and they want to multiply by 10. So that I work with the students to unlock what they could do in order to achieve so. And therefore, the student learn, the company might get some knowledge about what to do. And for me, it's a huge set of insights, which then I use to reflect and try to find connecting the dots of what is necessary.
Oh, alles klar. Danke schön. Danke schön. Alles klar. All is clear. Thank you so much, Dr. Sola. Dr. Sola, I have a quick question for you. I see you as a corporate leader. I see you as an education leader. Can you quickly tell me, is there any difference between the two leaders? Or it is saying, what is that, in case there is a difference, what is the critical difference? In case there's no difference, how do we look at corporate leader as well as education leader same way? What attributes? 1, 2, 3. Well,
again, if you frame the problem, you're asking a very difficult problem, but there are things in common, there are things that are different. So, of course, how you lead an organization should be first based on your why, yeah? So the reason why, like Simon Sinek famously says, what is the why? And that's, it's in common, business or education is, why am I doing it? What is that I care, and what is that I hope other people would care, so that they follow me for the why, not because of me, but because the reason is in common, not because of me or my charm or my good look or my money or whatever, yeah? So that is in common between business and education, because as I told you before, whenever I start a new class or whenever I start, like even the session today, I'm asking myself, why, yeah? What is, we had a few exchanges and, I ask you a question because I am only interested in doing things where I can have a little contribution. If I cannot have a contribution, it doesn't excite me. It's just as simple as that. And I'm not trying to say that for people that they like to do it is the bad thing. It's just not me, right? And so that's in common. What is different is the content. Of course, a leader in corporate has content type of decisions that are different from a teacher in a class. But it's the content that is different, not the process. And that's the third thing that is in common, which is the process. Process, it's very, a leader, one of the key skills of a leader is to think ahead of the problem. If you want people to follow you and be better off than if they were not following you, one thing that you need, and some people call it the vision. For me, it's very simple. Think ahead of the problem. A leader should, because he's in that position, is typically at the top of an organization, so he is in a privileged position to see further than people at the bottom. Not because he's better, it's just because he's physically in a position he can see things, but he cannot see as in detail as a person from the bottom. So the person from the bottom might be able to give you color where you only see edges, yeah? And that's, for me, the why is in common, the how is in common, so the process is in common, the what, the content is different simply because teaching a class is different from leading a team of programmers or leading a team of marketeers or leading a company doing tires or a company being a bank. It's the content that is different, but the reason why and the how, I think there are more commonalities than differences.
Wow. It's giving a lot of knowledge to understand how it is important to have this kind of leadership attributes. Now, looking at the present situation in the world, I am actually talking about two major leadership attributes. One is authentic leadership and another is ethical leadership. Now, I would like you to throw some light on both these leadership traits, that too in the present COVID situation where people have shown different approaches. How is authentic leadership and ethical leadership important to run the futuristic world, which we can say getting to the next orbit?
So, I mean, as you know, in leadership, there is a lot of new terms that they come in all the time, and there are a lot of waves and fashions and things. So when you're talking about authentic leadership or ethical leadership, first of all, you need to look at the etymology of the word. So what is authentic means? Is something that is authentic from India or from Italy or from wherever. It is something that has undisputed origins. Yeah. So that you know where it comes from, and you know that it comes from there. So an authentic leader, it is somebody that you know that has certain basic principles, call it the script of his character, that are not, you know, they might change over time, but they are there. They can improve. They can, because I truly believe that leadership is not a trait, because a trait means you're born with it. Yeah. For me, leadership is a muscle. Like any muscle, you train it. Oh. And sometimes to train it, you might get a stretch. You might get, you know, pain. And in any leadership journey, there are a lot of painful moments. Nobody is born a great leader. Yeah. And leadership, it is something that it's chiseled, it is nurtured, and even nurturing, it seems very positive. Yeah. Great leader, they went through a lot of hurdles, highs and lows, mistakes that they regret. But unfortunately, the only regret you can have on a mistake is not learn from it. And that's the only regret you can have. Everybody makes mistakes. And whoever leader tells me that hasn't made mistake is either a liar or is God. And since the two are very unlikely situation, therefore, you know, everybody is fallible. And that's the reality. But again, what I think is wrong is to portray leaders are some sort of unfallible humans. And this is the society. From your world to my world, I always do the LinkedIn trial. Every single leader tells me, would agree that, you know, failure is important and errors are important. And then I ask them, okay, if that is true, let's pull out your LinkedIn. Let's see if, you know, you ever listed any failures. Yeah. And if there are, then it means you believe it, because you cannot tell people that fail. So if you go on my LinkedIn, you will see a number of companies that unfortunately failed. And I'm not ashamed of talking about it. Yeah. Yeah. And because I learned something from it. I mean, it was an unfortunate outcome, but that is something that, for example, Z Gravity you mentioned before was a company that failed. Yeah. And there are others where the company failed, the product failed. And this is something that is very important to remember. Now, on the ethical leadership, I think, again, we need to look at the etymology of the word. Ethics, it's a set of moral principles. And the moral, it is something that is shaped by the culture you're in, because something that is morally acceptable in India might not be morally acceptable in another place. And it's very, very, and I'm always very wary of people trying to come with a standard of morality. Yeah, moral evolves as well. What was immoral in Italy 30 years ago is now totally acceptable. Yeah, so same-sex marriage was totally immoral, and now is absolutely morally acceptable. Does everybody accept it? No, but it is morally acceptable. So when I see this is that leaders should evolve and should challenge, because we would not have morally acceptable things if people didn't challenge them. You know, let's remember that slavery was morally acceptable in our country, like in other places, and it was morally acceptable. Nobody was disputing at the time. Now we have the movement against slavery, but all those things, again, I would invite people always to think and not just to react. Oh, you know, of course we need to be ethical leader. Of course, you know, but what is ethics? And, you know, It's the moral principle. Okay, your moral principle. Why should the Western world, for example, dictate to the rest of the world what is moral? I don't think we are in any position to do so. And we are in a position to share the experience, yeah? To say, look, according to those principles, that's what is happening. And then you decide if that morale is something you want to share or not. So again, I think, you know, I'm not pro, I'm not against. I'm always looking at what does it really mean? And can he really make better this world? For example, one thing that it seems now totally moral is to raise the voice, yeah? Or to challenge people very, very tough, yeah? I learned a lot because people were not afraid to tell me that I was wrong. And even in a colorful way. And which, you know, and sometimes I have the impression that because of all this kind of way of saying, oh, you need to be candid and you need to be super polite and politically correct, the people that get the feedback, they actually don't get it. They think they have done a good job where they have done a terrible job. And what is the moral? Not to tell people that they've done a bad job or telling them in a nice way. But the nice way has become a message say, because I've been in situations where I told them, what do you think that that person understood about your feedback? Do you think he understood that if he doesn't change, he's fired? Or did he understand that he did a good job? Oh, no, I think he understood that he's going to be fired. Then I get another person to ask and say, what do you think? Oh, I think I did all right, but I've got areas of improvement. You see that what is more immoral? Not to tell a person that is on the verge of catastrophe, or to tell them, oh, look, if you jump from the cliff, it's going to be fine. It's not going to be fine, because if you're jumping from the cliff, you're going to die. Full stop. So all of this, sometimes we really confuse the branch for the tree. What is that I care is the tree. If a branch gets broken, well, you know, it might be the price to be paid.
Beautiful. Amazing. Dr. Sola, it's very impressive. And that too, two things are really touching my heart, which is very important for us to put it on LinkedIn where we failed. And can we do that? Do we have that kind of an leadership trait to say, hey, this was the company where I failed? And I really respect you for showing a light to us today. And I have personally learned from you. And second is when we talk about ethics, it's certainly a very important aspect of life to really tell the world, show the world rather than talking the world. Dr. Sola, I remember we were together in the month of June on the digital platform with our guru, my guru, Padma Shri, Dr. Preetam Singh, Dr. Asha Bhandarkar was with us, Dr. Mithas from US was with us, Dr. Alfredo was with us, and you were with us. And I was doing that strategic leadership webinar during mid-COVID days. And COVID has not ended as yet. I can't say mid, but I can say June. And finally, on that day, our guru, Padma Shri, Dr. Preetam Singh said, leaders who work for others do not die. Leaders who work for themselves do die. And by end of June, we lost such a great guru. He was like my father, guru. And Dr. Preetam Singh has worked with you as well a lot. What are your quick memories about this relationship, personal and professional both? We are remembering our guru today when we are together.
I mean, Professor Singh or Preetam, he was almost, academically speaking, a father to me. And leadership has always been a great interest for me, but it was never a topic of research or reflection. And in fact, I was invited to come to India and teach at MDI Gurgaon, where he was at the time the dean. And since then, you know, we become the greatest of friends. And for me, as always, he's much more than a friend. He was really a role model as a human and as a teacher. And there are many things Professor Singh has shared, but one thing is pretty much reflected in what you said before. Great leader, they're not afraid of having people around them that are better. And you know, if you want, my concept around that is to maximize talent density. Yeah. And Professor Singh had always around him people that were, you know, intellectually speaking, at his level and in many respects better. Yeah. And that was part of his immense learning, because then he was able to pick from each one and push the level up. So it's the same parallel as in tennis or as in any sport. If you want to win, you play with people that are less good than you. If you want to learn, you will always try to play with people that are far better than you. And that's the choice you need to make, you know. And Professor Singh really conceptualized that beautifully. And the other thing that I learned from him, which I really think also comes from the Indian culture, is the positive energy. Yeah. So he probably shared with me the fact that when you have to be tough, you need to be tough. But he was, you know, on that, I can, you know, I could spend the next 20 years, I will never get there. He had that amazing ability from his smile, from his charisma, but also from his good well-wishing. He always wish you well. Yeah. And that positive energy was really coming across. And that is something that, especially in moments of crisis like those ones, if you don't have hope, you're dead. Yeah. So in this very moment, leaders should not picture a grim picture. They should be there talking about how great it's going to be when we are out. And unfortunately, we got leaders around that they are, you know, spending their time in talking about how bad the world is. We know it. They don't need us to tell us. And that is really, you know, something that, because with positive energy, then you think forward rather than backwards. It's very easy to blame, but you can only blame the past or the present. You can never blame the future, because the future is not there yet. And that's something that is very, very important. And the last thing that I think it was quite important for me from Professor Singh was I feel him to be there without him being there. Oh. Yeah? You know, I feel him in between the two of us. I could picture him there, because he was so profound in many of the things that he did, that although the world misses him, he's there. And he's there in my conversation, he's there in my conversation with colleagues we have in common. But often I've got this picture that says, okay, I ask myself, what would Pritam say if I was in this situation? How would he look at the problem that I'm looking at? And that is how he's going to leave the legacy, because he helped me to shape myself. And therefore, by shaping myself, he created an imprint that is there.
Thank you so much for sharing thoughts. And same here, I always feel that he's around. And I have, again, been a student with him. He has been my mentor. Dr. Singh, he must be watching us. And between you and me, we see that connect of Dr. Singh around. When Absolutely. I talk to Alfredo, I see the same connect. When I talk to Ashaji, I see the same connect. Dr. Sola, I need to close. My last question. You know, I am running one intervention called #Women Power, a global movement, wherein people are saying I'm crazy, 1 million women to be on this platform by 2024. How do you see this women power and women leadership going forward? Quick.
You know, first of all, I never like to do the distinctions, but it is definitely true that women, especially in moment of crisis, they're pretty good. And again, why is that? Because they are, for a reason or another, and not to be sexy, they think ahead of the problem. They are inbuilt thinking ahead of the problem. And of course, they like, and they typically are a little bit more, not simplistic, but simple into handling things. So why? Because maybe they've been taught that way, and they if you think about my wife, who is an incredible leader, she thinks ahead, a week, a month, and that inbuilt, of course, is reflected in their professional outlook, where women are very organized. They are the one that they are better, for example, at smart working, and we have but again, we compensate each other. As we can learn that skill, they can learn different things. And again, I do not think that there is such a big difference anymore. But one fact that is clear is that they don't have their fair share. Yeah. And the fair share is just reflected in decision-making positions. Because again, but the problem is not the woman, it is the system. Because women in their career, they will have moments where, for example, they will have children. Companies are not organized to deal with that. And so you want to have more ladies in the boards, you want to have more ladies in the top management, don't put quotas, put nurseries in the companies, yeah? And put flexible work, put the possibility of work. That is what is gonna get ladies not to stop their career and get on. Then if we want to put quotas, it's always welcome. But the issue is you're curing the symptom, not the cause. The cause is a lot of my splendid colleagues, they have to stop their career in consulting or in professional, not because they didn't want to, it's because for 9 months they were out, or 12 months they were out, and then maybe the child or something, there are unfortunately circumstances that need to be sorted out. And when I look at that, I just think I welcome the country that they put paternity leave, yeah, but not to have both because they need, the man and the woman, they should be, for example, somebody I respect enormously is Serena Williams, yeah. Her husband is a billionaire, or used to be a billionaire entrepreneur. He has given up that to follow her dream of winning another Grand Slam. Will she do it? I don't know. I wish for her. But that is something that it would never have happened 20 years ago. It would always be the other side that would give up. And, there are situations, for example, there is the CEO of, I think he was Zalando, that he resigned because he wanted to look after the children, so to allow the wife to become herself a CEO of a company. So I think that, if anything, women are as good as men, if not better, but they don't have the contextual support that is required. It's not a question of being better or worse. They just don't have the same. When you start a 10,000 meter race and a man is a kilometer in advantage, the woman needs to be 10 times better to reach the same distance. And that's what is not fair.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks a ton. Now I have some questions coming in. Yes. Who is that? So please allow my question. Who is that? So let me take this question first. Please raise your hand. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your hand on the Zoom. In the meanwhile, I am taking the question from other side. Tell me whosoever wants a question on the Zoom, please raise your hand. Yes. This is MBA 2003. Yes, you can be unmuted. Varsha, please help her to unmute. In the meanwhile, I have another question coming in from the other platform. Okay. So I have a question coming in, Dr. Sola. Is there any, this is Amin Raizada on the global TV, he is saying, is there any difference between the leadership practices in Western world and Indian continent?
Well, I am not really qualified to talk about Indian leadership. I worked quite a few times in India, and of course there are contextual things that are different, and the size, to a start, the size of the organization. I did some project for Indian Railways, and it's a gigantic organization, or Maruti Suzuki, but I would say that, in the essence, things, we are dealing with human beings. And I think there will be things in common and things that are different, but it's always on the content, not on the reason why and on the process.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Vikrant Chaudhary wants to ask a question. I am unmuting him on the Zoom. Vikrant, please go ahead and ask the question. Vikrant?
His audio is not connected. Connecting the audio.
Okay, then shall I ask the other question in the meanwhile in case Vikrant can come? I have another question coming in, which is, Mr. Sola, this question comes from Vinod Roila. Mr. Sola, you have worked in corporate as well as in business and education. Do you think that combination is good for you, for your career, or you could have worked only in education field?
Well, financially speaking, it might not be the most wise thing. Professionally speaking, I think it is a great combination, because what I research and teach at universities, what then I practice into companies and vice versa. So I think it's a great combination. It's not for the faint-hearted, because it requires a lot of effort and a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity on how to jiggle the different things. But that's the life I choose to live. And I'm very often people ask me, why are you doing it? Well, I say, guys, I'm paid to do my hobby. Yeah, I'm paid to do what I love. So why would I have any problem with it?
Wonderful. Now we have Shashank Singh. You can ask question in the meanwhile. Vikrant Chaudhary can get ready. Shashank, can you hear us? Shashank.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Please
Yes,
ask.
sir. Yes, sir. I am hearing. Good evening.
Go ahead. Oh, where is he? Yeah, Shashank, go ahead. Okay, Vikrant, can you go ahead in the meanwhile? Vikrant? In the meanwhile, Vivek Harkoli, can you go ahead? Till we get ready, because we are getting... Mr. Harkoli.
Good evening, Dr. Sola.
Good evening.
Bakshi.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
I had very interesting takeaways from your presentation, Dr. Sola.
Thank
One,
you.
continuous improvement, which means we are a student all our lives.
Correct.
Contribution and content. And the leadership, as you said, is think ahead of the problem. I like that. That is something great, which I sort of learned just now. And last but not the least, leadership is like a muscle. It is not something which is inherent. You build it. And therefore you nurture it, you develop it. These are my takes. I have a question now, Dr. Sola.
Sure.
Is leadership, let's say there is an organization and it has a issue in manufacturing, the raw materials are not coming in, there are supply chain issues, and the production is down. What do you think should the leadership do? Because they have orders to fulfill. Do you think the leadership should be upfront, tell the team that, look, we have an issue, and inform the customers like we would not be able to fulfill your orders, or let the issue fester like this and very little communication with the customers?
Look,
It's a practical problem.
Yes, I am answering your question with something that my father used to tell me. Yeah, and he used to tell me, Davide, problems are not like wine. I come from the wine region. Yeah, they don't get better with time. Yeah? Wine gets better with time, or can get better, but the problems, they get worse. Yeah, so that's I would urge you, like always I say, when a problem is bad, it's too late. It's like, you know, a lot of people these days are asking me, oh, what should leaders do? It's too late. You know, we are now have many problems of logistics and things. It's just because they haven't thought about the issue before. I mean, we knew that the vaccine will come. We didn't know when, but there was not a question of if. There were 40 plus multinational looking, putting the best brain to work on it, and we could open a chapter on that. But how come that in January, most countries are not prepared to distribute the thing? So these, and this is what leaders should do. Leaders are not God that they can, with a magic bat, change the things, but they can, and they should. That's why they're being given that position, or they earn that position, because they think ahead of the problem. And in this situation, if the problem is already there, the only cardinal sin would be not to deal with it. And if it means to go to customers and tell them, look, we got a problem, we are gonna sort it out, this is how it's gonna take us X weeks, X months. Do you prefer that, or the customer to have a faulty product, which then will kill the brand and which will disappoint them? They might say, look, maybe for 6 weeks, I'm not gonna buy your product, I'll buy from elsewhere, but you got a chance that at least they know that you're honest. And when the product will be good, you call them back. So it's always a matter of decision. Putting a problem under the carpet is not going to solve it.
Grazie, Dr. Davide. Grazie.
Prego. Prego. Vivek Harkoli is a very senior business head. He has worked a lot in your area, Europe. He has been moving in and out of Europe every second month and selling PET, PET bottles and PET resin. Well-known distributor. I have got another question which is coming from Facebook. Husha Rana Potedar. What would be the blueprint for leadership in any area of life?
Say it again.
What would be the blueprint for leadership in any area of life?
You know, I'm not really qualified to tell you a blueprint, but I can tell you what I think, and based on research and what leaders should always have very high in their agenda. First of all, they need to be curious. Yeah, curious about the future, curious about people, and because if you don't have that curiosity and that interest, it will be, you know, very, very difficult to be ahead of the problem. And the next one is that, of course, you need to have a lot of grit. Yeah, and you cannot pretend the people that they put passion if they don't see passion coming from you. And doesn't mean to, you know, there is the American way of shouting, jumping. You know, you can be gritty, you can have grit in many different ways. And each context might have cultural pattern and acceptable things to do. But I always see that if meet the passion for what is the problem at hand, how can you pretend that the people put passion and good emotion? So that is what I was referring before with the positive energy that I learned from Professor Singh. And the other thing is, of course, is something I am constantly learning, is a leader needs to be present. It doesn't mean physically present, but you need to be present. And when you're physically present, you need to be there. Because often myself, I'm still learning, and unfortunately I'm not very good. Sometimes I'm present, but I am with my mind miles away. So I'm physically there, but I'm useless. Other time I am spiritually there, even if physically I'm miles away. So those are the three things that I think they are the basic, the foundation. Then of course there is plenty of skills you may need to learn in order to deal, which are maybe very accustomed to the area where you are. If you're a teacher, of course you need to know learning techniques. You need to know.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
And if you are, a leader in a bank, you will need to know things inherent to the industry and to the business model and so forth. But those again are content. What is transmissible and what is the reason why and the how. So the process.
Thank you so much, Usha Potedar, and of course in Thailand, Sting. I hope you got the response. She English is a humble man. Dr. Sola is a very humble man, risen with ranks, and he is talking about it very well. There are some students, and can I have Shashank quickly, because otherwise I will have to close the program. In case you are there, you can have Shashank.
Oh, oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello, sir. Sir, I am audible.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Sir, it's my pleasure to be here. Question to you. Thanks for that. Some question is that we know the leadership, but Sweden.
Oh, his line is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And can in the meanwhile have Siddharth? Siddhi. SID, Siddhi, are you there? You can raise the question. I am unmuting you. And Vikrant Chakravarti. Yes. Vikrant? Okay. Then I have a question coming in before I close. Oh, Usha is saying, thank you, Dr. Sola. Okay. Now we are going to, I will still like to have these youngsters asking questions. Is any of the youngsters? Now I am unmuting you, Vikrant. I am unmuting you, Siddharth. Okay, fine. Now I go to Thailand, my Bangkok, in Narula, who is, we are already now, oh my God. David Sola, you know what's the time? We don't know what's going on.
It's
So,
almost 1:30, yes.
I would request in Narula, the director of Global Talent Company, Thailand. He is my bank. He is taking care of Bangkok right now. I'm staying in India. He is going to propose the vote of thanks. He is again being the dean of the university. He also teaches leadership and management with me in various corporates. And he has taught, of course, in university as well as a dean and director. In Narula, your final vote of thanks for Dr. Sola.
Thank you, and good evening, Dr. Bakshi and Dr. Sola. Hope both of you are in the best of spirits. Before I go on, since I am in the education and also in the corporate world, in a way very similar to you, Dr. Sola, before I left Assumption University, I was the vice chairman of the academic affairs. Now I run very successful two businesses. But very quickly, Dr. Sola, I think whenever the time permits, I'm sure Dr. Bakshi and myself, we would be, I would say, it would be a great honor to have you here to talk to some of the corporate leaders and also some university students, because we can learn a great deal from you. Today, your discourse was phenomenal. I have learned a great deal. And let me try to sum it up very quickly. What we need to perhaps take away is success is a mirror of effort.
Absolutely.
Success means 99% perspiration and maybe 1% luck. So you have to always be opening your eyes to catch that opportunities when it comes around. Very importantly, as a leader, never be too complacent. You must always be open to learn new things. And what does that mean? It means you be a great listener, because when you listen, you learn. And when you speak, you're only speaking what you know. So surround yourself with great people, learn from them, and you will progress. And if you teach, you will learn twice, as Dr. Sola has done as he was growing up. And very importantly, when in the corporate world, ask yourself, am I contributing? Am I making a difference within the organization? Because if not, then hey, open up your ears, open up your mind, learn and contribute. Learning every day to become even more excellent. Mastery. If you want to be a master, there will always be that variance that you can close. Learn from it. Be a little better than what you were yesterday. And that's the lesson what we have learned. In terms of remembering Dr. Pritam Singh, we sum up that leaders who work for others will never die. Dr. Singh has a maximum talent density around him. And that is how you grow, because you learn from the people who are better than you are. And my personal philosophy, if I have to hire someone in my company, well, I make sure that he's better than me, because if he is not better than me, why should I hire him? Leaders must have a positive energy. Even at the worst circumstances, you need to think forward. And because when you think forward, you're being very positive. And that's what we have learned from Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh is a legacy. He will always be with us. Just think of him and he's there with you. Authentic and ethical leaders. Authentic leaders are true to their purpose. They have a very clear vision and goals. And authentic leaders will not waste time and energy on the drama of life. Ethical leaders. Now, that is very much dependent on a lot of things. So ethical leader is a function of religion, upbringing, geographical areas, educational and cultural background. Let us not forget the art of giving and receiving feedback if you want to be a great leader, because that way you're closing the variance and you are becoming better every day. What are the difference between leaders in the corporate and the educational world? And the key is they are different and they are not different. They are different in the content and they are the same in the process and the role of a leader. Leader must excel in problem identification and finding solution. We need to move forward. And when we make a mistake, hey, we find a new solution and move forward to correct it. Having said all this, Dr. Sola, it has been a great evening. It is fun to be listening to you. I do not know how to thank you, but let me say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and a great thank you, and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And thank you for the audience. And thank you, DK, to organize this and moderate.
In Narula, our director, Global Talent Bangkok. Yes, we have an invite for Dr. Sola when air opens and come to Bangkok and share with Chamber as well as association, as well as some of the university. We will be doing that. He has been part of our Dr. Singh's team and we will continue the legacy. On behalf of Global Talent and on behalf of my team, and on behalf of attendees who have attended this program now and who will be looking at this program later on, I would like to thank you from the core of my heart, Dr. Sola, for a wonderful deliberation and discussion we had. There are key learnings which would be taken forward by many people, including the future leaders as well as present leaders. Thank you so much for being with me on this show, and I really salute you for your Doctor of Leadership and Management, I call you.
Thank you.
All the best and a great new year 2021. May God bless all of us and make this 2021 a gainful after painful process of 2020. Every pain has a gain, and I am sure we are going to be gaining in the process. All the best and good luck. Thank you, everybody who saw the point. And I am sorry some of the students wanted to have questions, but they could not raise questions because of some issue on the technology, but they can write it and it can be forwarded to Dr. Sola. All the best. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. And a great and happy new year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, sir.